This is section 14.6 and 7 all together in one. So here we're starting our talk about scientific notation. And scientific notation is when a number can be written as a product of a factor and a power of 10. Just kind of like what we did in the previous section, but the factor has to be greater than or equal to 1, but it has to be less than 10. So for instance, here's our factor, 8.3. That's between 1 and 10. And then here is our power of 10. Okay. So again, writing in scientific notation, we have a power of 10 or an exponent, positive exponent, if our number is greater than or equal to 10, right? So for instance, here, our b is positive, a positive 3, because our number here is greater than or equal to 10. If the number is between 0 and 1, then our exponent has to be a negative. Okay. So let's do a couple of examples. We're going to write this number here in scientific notation and then this decimal as well. Okay, so for this first one, first thing you want to do, let me write the number out so it's a little bigger. Okay. First thing we want to do is we want to move the decimal point so that our factor is less than 10, but equal to or greater than 1. Okay, so here we're going to start with our decimal here. We're going to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If we move it 8 times, we end up as our factor being 1.73, right? Okay, so we moved it, we counted how many times we moved it. We moved it to the left, so we know our exponent has to be positive. So writing this in scientific notation, it'd be 1.73 times 10 to the 8th power. Okay, now looking over here at this decimal, 3, 4, 5, 3, 2. Okay, so that decimal there, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to move the decimal so that it's right here. Because if we move it here, 3.2 is between 1 and 10, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We moved it 6 times. Our new factor is going to be 3.2. And then we need to see, we move the decimal to the right, so we know our exponent must be negative. So it's going to be 3.2 times 10 to the negative 6th power. Okay. All right, time for you to write in your notes, writing about scientific notation and then writing in scientific notation. Okay, the other way we can go backwards. We can start with scientific notation and then write our number in standard form. Okay, when we do that, if our exponent is negative, then we want to move our decimal point to the left. If our exponent is positive, then we want to move the decimal point to the right. So we're going to do 2 examples here. We're going to start out with the number 3.22, right? Our exponent here is what? -4. So since our exponent is negative, we want to move our decimal point to the left. So we're going to start here. We're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4. So that gives us that number there, 0.000322. Okay, now over here on this example here, we have 7.9 as our factor. We look at our exponent on the power of 10 and it's a positive 5, so it's positive. We move our decimal point to the right 5 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that gives us then 790,000 as our standard form. All right, again, another quick break for you to write some notes on writing in standard form. Now, the other thing we can do once we have things in scientific notation, we can perform operations on those numbers. We can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but in this case, we are just going to go over adding and subtracting. If we had more time, I would go over multiplying and dividing, but we're just going to start with that. Okay, so here we have 4.6 times 10 to the power 3 plus 8.72 times 10 to the power 3. So the first thing you have to check, you have to make sure that both your powers of 10 have the same exponent. And they both do. They're both to the power 3. So we don't have to rewrite them. And now we just need to perform the operation on the factors, right? So 4.6, and it says plus 8.72. That becomes 13.32. Okay, so 13.32 though, if we want, can't really, it'd be like this, 13.32 times 10 to the third power, but we know in scientific notation that our factor has to be equal to 1 or greater, but also less than 10. Okay, this is definitely greater than 10, so we need to fix that. All right, so we need to rewrite this. We're going to move the decimal point 1 to the left, right? So it becomes 1.332. Since we moved it to the left, we need to increase our exponent to 4. So we started with 3. So 10 to the 4th, right? So let's just double check that. So we started out with 13.32 times 10 to the third. If we put that into standard form, we would go 13.32, 1, 2, 3, right? So that would be 13,320. Now over here, if we do the same thing, we start out with 1.332 times 10 to the fourth. Now when it's 10 to the fourth, we need to move it 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. So then our number then becomes 13320. Same thing. Okay, but this is the correct answer there. All right, so now we want to do this one here. So the first step is to make sure that our powers of 10 have the same exponent, and they do not. So we're going to rewrite this one so it's 10 to the negative 2 power. So if we want to rewrite that, we know that this is 6.6 times 10 to the negative 1 times 10 to the negative 2, right? Because we know in our powers property, we would just add these two, right? We're multiplying these two, so you add their exponents. Negative 1 plus negative 2 is a negative 3, okay? But now we can do this, and we can change that, right? If it is 6.6 times 10 to the negative 1, that becomes 6, well, we move the decimal 1 over this way, right? So then it becomes 0.66 times 10 to the negative 2. Okay, now that's in the same exponent form as this one here. So we can simply just take, so this is what, 3.5 times 10 to the negative 2, all that minus all that. So then we just do the operation on our factors. So 3.5 minus 0.66. Bear with me while I do this the long method. 2.84. Okay, so this becomes 2.84 times 10 to the negative 2. We have to look, is our factor between 1 and 10? Yes, it is. So we can just leave this answer as is. Okay, now it is time for you to do 7 practice problems. Okay, on these practice problems here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, all you're going to do is rewrite it using scientific notation. That means, like, for instance, on this first one, I'm going to rewrite it. We're going to move our decimal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, right? Because we want it, our factor to be between 1 and 10. Actually, less than 10, it could be equal to 1. So it becomes 2.5. And I said, what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 10 to the 7th. Okay, you're going to repeat that for this one here. But on this one, these are decimals. So same thing. We're going to move the decimal point to the right this time, counting 1, 2, 3. So this becomes 5 times 10 to the negative 3, right? And then you can do that one as well. Okay, and then number 5 and 6, excuse me, we are going to then, we start out with scientific notation and you want to write it into standard form. Remember, since this is a negative exponent, we're going to move our decimal to the left. This is a positive, you're moving your decimal to the right. And then on this, number 7, you want to add these two, but first you need to do what? You need to make sure you have 10 to the same power, right? And then the second thing you want to do is then you want to perform the operation on your factors. And then you want to check to make sure that your answer, is it still in scientific form? If it isn't, you need to modify it so that it is. All right, and that is it for section 14.6 and 7.